Have you been in a moment of your life where you just want to have connection? Have you been wanting to experience something deeper and more meaningful? Have you wanted to experience God? What does that look like? Well, today we're going to talk about that. Welcome to Tiny Chair Talks, where we have big conversations in tiny chairs. Today, I am here with my friend, Tyler States. How are you?
Bro, I'm doing so good.
I'm glad. Thanks for being here. So tell us real quick, what do you do?
Yeah, I am a religious education major at Southern Adventist University.
Awesome. So being a religious education major, you've got to know, what does it mean to experience God?
Wow. That's a really good question. What does it mean to experience God? I think to be in His presence, to feel a connection, and I think to fully come to this understanding and believe and to know that He's your friend.
So would you describe experiencing Him as an event or as something different?
I think it's a daily thing. I think it's absolutely, it could be an event where you experience God, but I would say that I experience God daily as well. I would say hourly as well. It depends on the settings that I choose to put myself in, what I choose to fixate my thoughts on, the people that I'm around. Those people, those events, those thoughts help me experience God.
And how have you personally experienced Him before?
Wow. I think I have experienced God in many different ways. I think one of the first times that I really felt as though I had an experience with God was on a mission trip in Honduras. And it was late one night, and I was just kind of in a period of just kind of thinking and questioning some things. And I went out to the back patio of this place that we were staying, and I just knelt down on the concrete, and with all these cicadas and birds, and I don't know, it was an interesting environment, but I just knelt down, on my bare knees on this concrete, and I just started praying to God. And as I was praying there, I had probably 4 or 5 really specific questions that I've been dealing with personally, spiritually, in terms of kind of where my life was headed and some issues with friends. And as I was praying to God just for wisdom, the Holy Spirit started to put different Bible texts in my mind and on my Bible beside me. And I started to open up, and essentially God led me through this really specific Bible study where He led me to verses that answered each and every one of my questions just right on the dot. And it wasn't something that I had planned. It wasn't something that I had set up. I hadn't told God that I was going to meet Him here at this certain point in time, at this location. I was just in the moment, and I was just in this position of supplication with God, and I was open and just asking for His presence and His guidance, and He met me there. And that was the first time probably that I really felt that God was there and that He was real.
Man, I like that openness that you're describing, how you were kind of seeking it and you received it.
Absolutely.
Do you think a person who isn't searching for God can still experience Him?
100%. 100%. I think, though, a great way to look at the possibility and the chances of having an encounter and experiencing God can be thought of in terms of what we do when we try to go to sleep. If I want to go to sleep, if that's my goal, I'm not going to go into the kitchen, and I'm not going to have the lights on, and I'm not going to be doing the dishes or eating food, and music isn't going to be playing. If I want to go to sleep, I'm going to go to my room, and I'm going to get in bed, and I'm going to turn the lights off. It's going to be quiet. I'm putting myself in a better situation and giving myself a better possibility to have success. And I think that there are things that we can do that can really allow us to have an experience with God.
We got to be intentional about it.
Exactly.
You mentioned going on a mission trip to Honduras. What is it like for a person who might not have an opportunity to go on a mission trip?
Man.
Is there a way for them to still experience God if they're not doing those really amazing things?
Oh, absolutely. I've experienced God in the most random places on this earth. No, I only think all it requires is just, I would say it doesn't even require the desire to experience God, because I think God meets us when we're not expecting it either. You think of Saul traveling to Damascus. He didn't expect to get beamed by the Lord and fall off his horse and just see Jesus face to face there. No, I don't think that we have to do anything extravagant or perfect or spiritually oriented to have an experience with God.
I like that illustration of Saul's life, of him, traveling, and he just experienced him out of nowhere.
Yeah.
So how about for the person who doesn't have that really cool story behind them? It's really easy to compare our story with the amazing testimonies we hear from somebody else. Is there a reason why some people don't get to experience those, I don't know, overt or maybe extraordinary situations in their life?
Sure. I think I'll share something that I experienced and I ran into at the beginning of 2020. I had recently gone through a pretty traumatic event in my life, and I, as more of a introspective person, was kind of just running through a lot of the things in my life that might have helped cause the situation I was in, maybe what had led to it. And I was led to this understanding that I wasn't seeking after God as intentionally as I could have been. And regardless of how that affected the situation that I had just gone through, I knew that I wanted it to change. It's not that I wanted to be able to just fix anything that had happened, or I wanted to kind of say, hey God, I'm sorry I messed up. Can you give me back what I had lost? But I was led to Jeremiah 29:11, and I was reading, and we all know what that verse says. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, their plans to prosper you, not to harm you, to give you hope in a future. And I had never read beyond that verse. And I believe it's in Jeremiah 29:13, and please don't quote me if I'm incorrect, but the Lord says, you will seek, or you will search after me, and you will find me when you search for me with all of your heart. What I had to ask myself was, I haven't felt like I've been experiencing God. I felt like He's been distant. I feel like He hasn't been hearing my prayers. And I was putting a lot of blame on the Lord. And I had to turn around and ask myself, but Tyler, have you been seeking Him with all of your heart, or just some of it, or when it's convenient for you? And I wasn't able to truthfully answer that I had been searching for Him with all my heart. And what God led me to feel convicted to do was to start stripping away all the things in my life that were potentially serving as barriers to having a real deep interpersonal relationship with Him. And that led to me cutting out many things in my life. And I probably wouldn't have ever started to make some of these changes and these cuts in my life if I hadn't have been driven to this real desire to experience God in a true, meaningful way that I felt was real and personal. I'd heard many people talk about experiences with the Lord and God, but I had never really felt that for myself personally. I was like, that's great for you, but what about for me? And what God was able to do was able to just start just showing me in beautiful ways through a sermon series just how real and personal He would like to be with each and every one of us.
I like that. So it's kind of like, in order to experience God, I have to let Him experience me, or have to open myself up to Him so He can come in.
Yeah.
So is experiencing God more than just a feeling?
Definitely. It's more than just a feeling. I think if we base our whole relationship with God based off of our feelings, I don't know if that's real. I think that our feelings can always lead us to feel much better or much worse than we truly are. I think what's real always lies somewhere in between our highest highs and our lowest lows. I think a relationship with God is marked by confidence in the fact that even when I don't feel Him, He's still present. And know that He is still consistent and He's my friend.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I mean, it's deeper than just a feeling. It's a knowledge of that relationship. That's really good. How about for a person who has never experienced God? They've been a part of a church for a long time, but they've never had an actual connection. Are they in the wrong? What should they do to change it? What should be their perspective?
Yeah, I don't think anybody's in the wrong. I think we just all have different ways of connecting with God. I think that some of us, it's much easier to experience God through music, or maybe it's much easier for us to experience Him just through prayer, or it is through reading the Bible, or it's through writing songs or poetry. There's so many different unique ways to experience God. Something that I had always seen and heard that people did was they would prayer journal. And that always seemed super abstract and unrelatable. I couldn't vibe with that. It didn't make sense. And if I'm being honest, the reason I would never journal is because I didn't like my handwriting. And so I just wouldn't write. I wouldn't journal anything. And something that my boss was able to help me realize was that, that journal, all it could be is just you taking notes. It could just be you taking notes based off of your devotions that you're having. And I think that leads into something that's so important is I truly don't understand, and I don't know if people can have a real vibrant relationship with God without a personal devotional life. I don't say that to condemn anyone who isn't currently experiencing that, but I haven't, in times of my life when I'm not having those devotions versus when I am, it's such a clear difference of me feeling the presence of God practically in my life, through my emotions, through just my positivity, through just my more alert and aware understanding of His Holy Spirit's presence in my life. I would really encourage everyone to just find what works for you. And what worked for me was, one, reading the Bible. But it started, and my motivation to start reading the Bible came through a sermon series. And it was just a sermon series by these two pastors that I really connected with. I really appreciated their style and their honesty. And that led me to want to dig deeper. So I think getting some exposure to other people who were experiencing God gave me a glimpse of what's possible and the confidence to start taking steps.
I appreciate that. And it makes me think about how in my past, I thought the only way to experience God was the same way my parents were doing it. Did you ever experience anything like that?
Yeah, I would say so. But I would say nothing on my parents. I think my parents were wonderful at really empowering us and encouraging us to have our own experiences with Him. We would always have corporate family worship, but they would always encourage us to have our own individual worship as well. And I think that there are many different tools that we can use to get closer to God. I mean, there's so many different forms of literature and inspired writings in the Bible itself, and prayer and music that can all go to serve to just really connect us with God. I mean, it's truly whatever it is that can draw your soul into connection with Him. I mean, there's so many different ways. There's not one right way, and there's not any wrong way either.
Yeah, that's right. So it can be the same way our family did it, but then we can find our own routine too.
Sure.
Yeah. And so how have you seen God looking to connect with you?
Wow, absolutely. So I'll share something really specific. When I was listening to that sermon series that I recommended, one of the pastors suggested and shared something that he's been doing in his own personal life. And he shared how he felt convicted to be having his devotions in the morning, but he has never been a morning person. He's always struggled to get up, and he felt that the times, even when he would set an alarm and go ahead and have his devotions, he was never really engaged, and he was tired, so he'd push it off till later in the day. And then later in the day, he was distracted, and he pushed off till the evening. And then in the evening, he was busy. And they just wouldn't happen. And I think it was in Isaiah, perhaps. There's this verse in the Bible that says, "You wake me up morning by morning."
Yeah.
And he felt convicted to stop setting alarms and just ask for God to wake him up whenever he saw fit in order to have his morning devotions. And I heard that, and it really struck me as this is an opportunity to really express faith in God, to really start to just trust that, God, if this is so important, you're going to make it happen, because evidently I can't. I'm not faithful enough. I get tired. I get distracted. And so I went to God that night as I was running this idea of just forgoing alarms and asking Him to wake me up. I went to God and I told Him, I don't have the faith that's needed for this to happen. I don't actually believe that you can wake me up in the morning whenever. I always sleep in if I can help it. I have school in the morning, and I don't remember what time it was. I went to bed after just being very vulnerable with God. It was probably 2 or 3 in the morning. And I woke up and I was like, there's no way this is God. There's no way. And I actually went back to sleep. I went back to sleep, and I woke up from my class that day, and I just felt this big hole in my heart, and I was just like, man, I missed something. And I said, God, like, if that was you, I'm sorry, and can you wake me up again? And the next night, He woke me up at probably somewhere around 2:30 in the morning, just an unholy hour. And I sat up in my bed, and I was like, okay, God, if this is what time you want this to happen, okay, let's do it. And I went ahead and I got up and I just had my devotions. I read my Bible. I think I was reading Steps to Christ at that time. And I had like an 1.5 hour long devotion session. And it was amazing. And I was awake. and I just felt alert, and it was great because I didn't feel rushed. There was no passing of time, and it was nice. It was quiet. It was dark, and I was able to just go back to sleep then after that, and to set my alarm for my day after that. And this continued, for several days and then weeks, and I can't remember when it was exactly, but there was a day where I had a flight the next morning, and I had to be up at a certain time to get ready, and I had to leave for that flight. And I was like, God, I'm in this position where I have to make this flight, and I need to be up. It wasn't like, oh, I could maybe wake up at 9 and I could still make it. I need to be up like at 5:30 in the morning. And I was like, Lord, He'd been waking me up at many times, 4, 1 o'clock in the morning. Sometimes it was 5, 2:30. Sometimes He let me in and let me sleep in, and it was 7. And I was like, God, I feel as if me taking my phone and setting an alarm is taking matters into my own hands. And I'm just going to trust that You're going to wake me up and You're going to take care of me. And God woke me up exactly when I would have set my alarm to have worship and be able to leave in time. And it was amazing just to see how that was it was totally out of my control. And each and every day, I never wake up. I never wake up randomly in the middle of the night. It's only been when I asked God to do it. And He did that for several months straight. And it was so powerful just to have that be such a consistent daily basis. It was just me and God. Yeah. There was one night where I asked Him, I wasn't sure. I think it was several days into this experience. I was wondering, I was like, God, is it just me waking up? Am I just hungry? Do I have to go to the bathroom? Something like that. I was like, can You give me some sign that it's actually You and it's clearly You? And I had, that year of school, I kept my bike in my room rather than in the shed downstairs where they keep all the other bikes. And I had bumped into this bike many times trying to get off my bed and get to my closet and get clothes and stuff. My roommate had run into it. It had never ever fallen down. It never fell. And I remember I was just sleeping one night and I woke up to the sound of my bike falling. And my bike had fallen perfectly on its side. The handlebars hadn't twisted. Nothing had hit it. Nothing had fallen. And I looked at it and I was like, God, is that You waking me up, specifically? And it was so loud. And I asked my roommate the next morning, I was like, did you hear the bike fall? And he's like, I didn't hear the bike fall. And it was right beside his head. And that was just such a powerful just answer to these prayers that I've been praying. And so I'm not here saying that this is for everybody to do, but I can just say that for me personally, this experience of just trusting God to wake me up in the morning for when it's time for us to hang out and have our devotions, that's been such a clear, just beautiful example of just the experiences with God that I've been able to have with Him.
Man, that's powerful. I love that story. Yeah. And I think that describes the natural tendency to not want to seek God, one, because of sleep. Mm-hmm. I think everybody can relate to that. I'm tired. I don't have time to do my devotions because I'm so sleepy, but also just because of what sin does to our nature. It separates us from the Father.
Absolutely. And I would say that, the last thing Satan wants is for us to be hanging out with God. And so I remember within the first few days of me trying to do this with God, I would wake up and I'd be very tired. And my bed would be it'd feel warm and comfortable. I'm like, more so than usual when I'm trying to wake up.
Oh, I've been there.
And I'm like, that's just kind of like a human thing. But I know that there's a spiritual battle going on as well, and Satan does not want me to get up. And so what I started praying in addition to God waking me up was to wake me up and let me feel awake and be clear-minded. And something that I had to do with that is I actually had to start getting out of my bed and I had to go sit at my desk. And I just had my phone out, trying not to wake my roommate up, and just actually remove myself and put myself in a better situation to have more success in this relationship with God. So I recognize that the intentionality led to more deep and enriching experiences. I think that we can experience God anywhere, but I do think that there is much that we can do to give ourselves better opportunities.
Yeah, so you're talking about changing your posture in a physical sense, but maybe there's also a mental posture we need to change in order to be receptive.
Exactly.
Yeah. Can you describe what devotions should look like? Maybe there are expectations that a certain person might have. What do you say your morning worship or whatever time of day worship should be?
Wow. I don't think there's any should be. I think an interesting quote that people will toss around is Ellen White has a quote where she says that it'd be wise for us to spend a thoughtful hour in reflection of the life of Christ each day. And I think I don't know if that's a literal term, but I think what that means, and the term thoughtful, is intentional. And I think just spending intentional time with Jesus, and only we will know what level of intentionality we're putting forth. I think it's easy, and I've heard the term of just kind of having a verse in my hand with my hand on the doorknob as I leave the house, just kind of quickly rushing it just to do it. I can sense when I'm doing something just to check it off my list,
yeah.
versus actually desiring to experience, God in all of His fullness. And I think of it in terms of almost like eating food. I think that sometimes we're kind of just grabbing granola bars when God has such a feast prepared if we want it. And I think God's really I think His deepest desire is to pull us into a deeper relationship with Him, because He knows it's what's best for us. There's so much that we miss out on, I think, when we aren't, pursuing after Him with an intentionality and a seriousness. I felt so much joy, in these periods of just heightened devotional experiences. And for me, it was, I would, read certain chapters of the Bible, followed by journaling as I kind of went over certain parts that I'd highlighted and basically just took notes. Sometimes you just couple that with listening to music, and some people do devotionals by just walking. They'll go out into nature, right, and they'll walk, and they'll just sing or they'll talk. And I think for each and every one of us, it just comes down to whether or not we're being intentional, and if we actually want to experience God. I think it's like God said, like, you will seek me and you'll find me. You will find me when you search for me with all of your heart.
Yeah, so it requires that intentional searching.
And whatever follows after that intentional searching, I think is beautiful.
I like that thoughtful hour phrase. It makes me think about when I first started doing devotionals. I would have my Bible and just flip it open and just start reading. And then I would come across the most depressing Bible verse.
Wow.
And I didn't feel like it would do anything for me. Is there a part of Scripture that you recommend people to dive into?
I absolutely recommend the book of John. The book of John was so impactful for me, and it's where I think Jesus' character and His love is so clearly shown. I honestly can't say enough about John. So powerful.
John is great.
I was having a meeting with one of the people I work with yesterday, and my Bible was open to the book of John yesterday. I think a powerful verse in John 15:5 is Jesus says, I'm the vine, you're the branches. Just remain in me. Remain in me. I think that's something to think of, the word remain, of it's not a coming and then leaving. I think remain for me means you come and then you stay with Jesus. I don't just come to Him in the morning and then just leave. I just take Him with me throughout my day. And I don't know, it's beautiful. It's beautiful. So definitely John.
I appreciate that. And with experiencing God, we're talking about doing our devotionals, jumping into Scripture. But what if someone feels like, I just don't get it? Maybe they're reading the Bible and it doesn't make any sense. Or maybe they're trying to wake up early in the morning, but it just doesn't, touch the soul in the way that it needs to. What's going on there?
I think something, if just kind of reading sometimes is a little more difficult, I think if we're speaking directly about the Bible, I'd say just really find a translation that works for you. I mean, there are so many different translations, and I'd say if you're reading the Bible, praise God, regardless of the translation. That's something that was helpful for me. I think it's okay if some things don't click for you either. I would say to remember that the devil is always going to try to keep us away from Christ. He's going to make reading the Bible as boring as reading a dictionary. He's going to make us exhausted in the morning. And those are things that I encountered, and I had to take those struggles to the Lord and ask Him to help me overcome them. I knew that I was going to be tired in the morning, but I was like, but God, help me to be so in just deep desire for this that it doesn't matter. Give me the strength to be able to power through that exhaustion. Even help me wake up chipper and ready to go at 3 a.m. To just study with you. And I would just say for everyone, just to really be honest with yourself and just question if some of the things that aren't working for you are just based off of maybe just our preferences, and maybe just give some stuff that hasn't worked in the past another chance.
That's good. So how can we help other people experience what we've experienced?
I don't know if I can, but it's definitely, it's just taste and see, taste it for yourself. I think being very open and honest in prayer has been a way that I felt like I've really been able to start to experience God. I really encourage that for everybody, to just be open and honest in our prayer we don't have to like put on a show. We don't have to, you know, if I'm creating barriers and not using the same language that I use with you or with any of my friends, like God's my friend, and starts to talk to him as such. That's been a way that I was able to really start making my faith walk practical and feel real. And I think finding books and stories and songs that really we're able to relate to. There's no specific place to start, but I think just take that first step, whatever it may be. Like whatever you know you can do, like do it.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit more about that? You know, the language we use when we talk to God.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I can say that I don't go to God and I don't pray with these and thous. There are times where I approach God and it's just like, yo, God, and I literally say that. And sometimes it's auditory, sometimes it's within my head. And I'm just honest. I say, Lord, I'm struggling right now. And I'll honestly just use the same tone of voice I'm using right now, and I'll just be open. And sometimes I'm walking outside with my eyes open. Sometimes my eyes are closed. Sometimes I'm kneeling. Sometimes I'm sitting. Sometimes I'm laying down. But just truly kind of being in tune with myself and what my emotions and my feelings are, and just taking them all, acknowledging them all, and bringing them to Jesus and saying, God, I feel lonely right now. God, I'm feeling really discouraged. Or right now I'm being tempted. And I'm experiencing these things and I don't want a part of them, and I just need you to help me. And I think just being super straight up just with the way that I'm feeling and how my brain is working and my emotions are running, hormones, whatever it may be, and just acknowledging them all and then taking them to the feet of Jesus. And going to him, not only when things are bad, but going to him when things are great. That's one of the coolest things I've been able to start doing, is just to look at the little beauties in life and just attribute them to God. Like something happens and it's just for the good, and it's like the most minuscule blessing, but I'm like, you know, God, thank you for that. And those are just little things that help increase my connection, my love for God, because I'm able to start seeing him present in many things that I didn't see before.
That's good. I appreciate that. And experiencing God has to become in my own language, has to become personal, just like any other relationship would be.
Exactly.
Is it possible that someone can experience God and yet still try to experience the world too? Can we try to balance those things? What does that look like?
Yeah. Well, I think a great line is it Graves in the Gardens? The first line is, I searched the world, but it couldn't fill me.
Oh, yeah. I love that song.
Man's empty praise and treasures that fade are never enough. And so I honestly feel as though searching the world can almost lead to a greater experience with God, because we fully know how empty it is, and we know how empty it leaves us. And I think it just makes God all the sweeter. I wouldn't say for people just to go out and just, you know, run wild, but I would say, you know, there can be value in our experiences with the world, and they can open our eyes, I think, to what there is and what there isn't, and what is promised versus what is delivered. I think that Satan offers so much joy and peace and happiness, but it's not there. You know, I've done my fair share of stupid things in life, and they've taught me more and more just how empty, you know, you can feel, and how fulfilling Jesus, you know, can be in my life.
So none of that really satisfies at the end of the day.
No.
Yeah, and it all comes from God at the end.
Absolutely.
Of it. That's powerful.
Yeah.
Tyler, thank you so much for sharing.
Yes, sir.
I love hearing about your experience experiencing God.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, and we want to tell you at this moment to experience God for yourself. Maybe you've been searching for that. Maybe you've been desiring a spiritual high moment in your life, but experiencing him can be much more simple. Spending time in the morning, studying the Bible, being in prayer, and that's how you get to experience him. We thank you so much for joining Tiny Chair Talks, where we have big conversations in tiny chairs. We hope to see you very soon again. Hey, you made it to the end of the video. Thanks for joining. We want to encourage you to hit the subscribe button, like this video, and share it with someone else. Also, if you want to see some more content, check out either one of these two videos.